And I do want to see more people take martial arts than play video games. But mostly I want to see people...
Perfect.
Let me start this off by saying, this is not a reaction video. So recently there's been a little bit of argumentative content involved around Joe Rogan, and he was talking about something about video games. I haven't watched the video yet. Apparently Joe Rogan had something to say, and then some video game people had something to say. As someone who teaches kids karate, I feel like I have a little bit of information that I can give, maybe? Who knows? I haven't watched the video yet. We'll see. We're going to watch it now. Let's get to it.
You know, and then they seek refuge in drugs or video games or something that stimulates them. And video games are a real problem. They're a real problem. You know why? Because they're fucking fun.
Addictive.
And you don't, yeah, well, I have a real problem with them. And you do them, and they're real exciting, but you don't get anywhere.
Video games are really interesting. Video games give you, like, what feels like a tangible goal in a way of kind of living outside your own life, and I think that's why kids like it, because kids go through a period where they're like, they don't know what they are, their life is like weird, and it's just school all the time, and if you don't have sports, it's like your goal system is like, what, be good at school? Like, a lot of people do enjoy that, but a lot of kids don't necessarily fit into any particular group, and video games are cool because they have so many different variations, they have so many different goals that you can achieve, and like you mentioned, they are really fun, so it makes sense why kids like video games. I like video games. Video games are cool.
Right. It's like you could do like martial arts, right? You could learn Jiu Jitsu. You get obsessed by Jiu Jitsu, and then 3 years later, you're like an elite Jiu Jitsu athlete. You're entering in competitions. You're a purple belt.
You're moving up.
Yeah, you're doing well.
Right.
You're thinking like, I might be able to open my own school one day.
You got confidence.
Yeah, if I have 100 students and those 100 students are paying me X amount of dollars per month, I can make a living. Holy shit, I can have this would be amazing. And then you see your Jiu Jitsu school, and your Jiu Jitsu instructor has all these students and drives a Mercedes, and he's got a nice family, and like, that's the future.
First off, the only way you can become a school and have a lot of money after 3 years is in Taekwondo. Moving forward.
This way, you're doing something exciting and fun, and you don't. Or you could just be playing video games. 3 years later, you could be that same kid just playing video games, waiting for the next whatever the game is. You know.
Okay, so I see where it's coming from. I think that the first thought is like the average way to make money on video games is being at like super above the average. Which makes sense. Like what he's trying to say here is that if you play video games for 3 years, there's a good chance that you will have done 3 years of just playing video games. Or if you take martial arts, you've had 3 years. Body is better. Your mind should be better. You have something you can compete in. Which, not saying that's not the case for video games, but then also that you have like a self-defense aspect that goes to it. So there, just to give Joe Rogan a quick bit of context here. However, when you say that video games are like drugs, like I can see how there's a bit of an issue there.
Are now saying, well, Dad, this guy made all this money with this video game. That's
real too. That's
right?
real too.
I immediately think of this as a lot like an astronaut. Like kids wanted to be astronauts a while ago because it was something that they saw that people were like making a lot of money of, and it was something that people looked up to astronauts. Every kid wanted to be an astronaut for a long time. Like now, every kid wants to play video games. It is something otherworldly about it that seems way more enticing than everything else seems. Nobody's like, yeah, I want to be a manager of a yogurt shop. Like would it be more acceptable for him to be like, you know what? I want you to be a teacher. I want you to be paid a lower salary. I want you to work all the time, and those dreams that you have, just, chase those.
So like that's 1 in a billion, kid.
I don't know if it's 1 in a billion, but, look, I heard the same argument about comedy. My own parents were like, do you know how few people make it as a comedian? I was like, okay. Does anybody make it? Somebody makes it, right? They figure out how to do it. They make a living. I'm going to do that. Yeah. Just stop. I know what I'm doing. I was real lucky that my parents were not around very much, so I didn't get much advice. So I figured it out myself. So there was no one telling me I couldn't do it. So
Green fields.
I was like, I'm gonna find my way through this, and since no one's telling me it's impossible, no one's telling me I can't.
This is what tends to happen as you have like a platform where you're just straight up talking all the time, just talking. You tend to do things like you'll say something and you'll contradict yourself like 2 minutes later. That's literally what he did here. He said something, he contradicted himself 2 minutes later because that's how human brains work. We have faults all the time. What you could take as him saying is, hey, don't listen to me. Literally, for kids, if you're young, now is the time where you have the least amount to lose. Like, if you have a dream, you should be working towards it. Absolutely. A lot of people don't think of playing video games as working towards something because it doesn't have as many tangible values immediately. Like, you could be a streamer, you could do this, you could do that. Like, I'm on social media. I get there's a lot of different things you can do with video games. You don't have to be winning games to be good at video games in a way, which is crazy to say.
Occasionally I would hear someone say, what are the odds? I'm like, listen to this
Subscribe.
fucking loser. That's my thought was always like, that guy's a loser. Like, if you think like that, you're a loser. But there are kids that make a lot of
Subscribe.
money playing video games. But the thing is, like, you have to be adaptable. You have to be able to play multiple video games because the one video game that you get really good at, what are the odds that's going to be around 5 years from now?
Right.
You know, like, what's the big one now?
What he's saying, though, is really interesting because you have to adapt in anything. I have an MBA, for example, in marketing. So if I wanted to grow up and be somebody in marketing, if I wanted to be a director of marketing, I would have to always adapt to the different forms of medium. Like that people, like I would have to get used to social media, and before that I would have had to get used to email, and then before that I would have had to get used to like handing out flyers all the time. Like there's always going to be those different adaptations where if you really want to be good at it, you have to be able to like move in different spaces. And video games are no different in my opinion. I see where he's coming from. You do have to be very lucky in order to be great at this stuff. I got lucky. I kicked a bottle. Like think about that. I'm here right now because I continued kicking bottles until eventually something just like popped. As long as it's not negatively affecting their mental health, it depends how old these kids are. Like now we're gonna see what actual video gamers, professional people who play video games for a living, have to say about this.
It sounds like he's talking about like the top 1%, like the very odd or one-off chance that you're going to be a professional player, an esports player, and a successful one at that, right? I mean, you can be a professional esports player and, you know, beyond like a tier 2, tier 3 org, which is not maybe paying you the most. And obviously if you're not winning and being paid a lot, you're not a big streamer, then you're not really making a lot of money. He talks about how, you know, gaming can potentially not really get you anywhere, right? You're putting a lot of time into it and you're just mindlessly playing video games. I just don't think what Joe doesn't really understand then the full context of what the gaming community is and how many different avenues you can be successful in gaming.
So, like I mentioned, there's different things you can be doing. I'm not going to repeat pretty much what we said. I think Joe's point here, though, is that if you have the mental toughness of constantly going through something all the time, putting your body through something all the time, not saying it's not mentally tough to play video games for 12 hours a day, I'm sure it is, but whenever you're physically moving your body more, then we all know you get more benefit from moving your body than you do from not moving your body.
Player, being a freaking coach, I mean, like, you don't, like, like, you can be incredibly understanding of the game, but not have the physical capacity to be able to, you know, get pentakills.
I think what's going to happen is that we're going to start to see esports become more and more like sports throughout the years. I mean, Taekwondo is pretty much already an esport. Just kidding. Just kidding. But no, what's going to happen is that we're going to start to normalize video games just like we've normalized everything else. And meanwhile, I think that there will always be that like disconnect of people who are moving their body and people who aren't. I think it's imperative that people who are streaming all the time give kids the right idea that like this hard work should also come with hard work on yourself. I think the issue that Joe Rogan probably has here is that if you could take the same thing into account with like wanting to be an astronaut. We had that conversation earlier where it's like something you're trying to get that 1%, you're trying to be an astronaut. I think the issue that a lot of people have is that if you go all that avenue of trying to be an astronaut, trying to be a high tier jiu-jitsu player, roller, whatever you call them, that you're going to become smarter, you're going to become stronger, you're going to become this, you're going to become that, and if it all falls down at the end of it, like you should have some sort of attributes that can land you another job, that can land you some sort of mental toughness, life skills that you get along the way, the journey of it all, rather than seeing the end goal and being like, okay, I'm going to attain this and not thinking about what it gives you in between. I can see why Joe Rogan would say this as someone in the martial arts community, and I do want to see more people take martial arts than play video games, but mostly I want to see people happy. I think as long as you are being realistic with yourself, as long as you're being honest with yourself, you're maintaining your mental health and your physical health, I have no problem with it if kids play video games. If they say they want to be a video game player professionally, then they should take the opportunity to do so while they still live under their parents' roof and don't make any money. Alright guys, if you like this, make sure you hit the like button. Comment either video game bad or Joe Rogan bad, because there's no in between. Okay guys, make sure you hit the subscribe button or I will kick you with my fist. This one, to be precise. Bang!
Water, earth, fire, air. Long ago, the four nations lived together in harmony. Then, everything changed when the